Housing and Economic Development Committee. Present this evening via Zoom, we have Mark, myself, Bill Dwyer, Sean, and Amy from the committee. And our first item on the agenda this evening is a proposed housing project. And let me make sure I have the correct Parmer brother tonight.
You got me until December, and then you got Shardul. So
Okay, all right.
I'll be in India the first 2 weeks of December, and then it's definitely Shardul. So
Okay, all
you can
right.
usually tell because I'm smiling a little more. But
I'll bear that in mind, Kishore. Okay,
yeah,
so we have Kishore Parmer, and then he's working with Chris Chamberlain from Berkshire Design Group. They made this presentation to the select board last evening, and I believe they're going to provide at least that or a subset of it for our benefit tonight.
yeah, probably a little bit of a subset because you were there yesterday, Molly, and Mr. Dwyer is pretty familiar with it already. So it's mostly for the rest of the group. Essentially, I'm going to summarize what we're trying to do or what we're trying to accomplish, which is a couple of amendments to the bylaw and some zoning rules, I believe, regarding senior housing. It's specifically over 55 housing only, and it's residential and it's renting. It's not condos or housing. One of the one of the key points to it, and there's multiple points to it, but one of the key points is housing density that we could put in one structure. Currently, the bylaws state 4 dwellings per structure. So that means if you're going to build something, it can only have four, um, basically four rental properties or four condos or four anything in it, which what we want to do is build around 50 to 55 units in between. So if you're trying to do that many, it's going to take up a large amount of land um, in the zoning area. So we're trying to amend that so that's allowed. There's other elements to it, but that's one of the key points to it. We've presented this a couple times with the planning board, but due to the ADU issue that happened over the summer and some other, pressing incidents, we've been waiting to discuss this and the town meeting. We've been waiting to discuss this and hopefully it gets done soon. Um, Chris, I don't know if you want to go into some of the, changes just at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's someone who could allow me to share, I just have a couple of images that will help the discussion a little bit.
All set.
Great. And so, as Kishore said, we're looking at specifically the what was formerly the limits of the senior housing overlay district. Of course, it got expanded a little bit last town meeting last week, and so just to be clear, sort of on the outset, what the proposed changes would affect this area that you see here, which is the current senior housing, which is also coincident with the village center zone. The additional areas that were added to the senior housing overlay, in our conception of this, would be separated out and basically keep the exact same zoning that they have now, but be designated as a senior rural overlay district that would continue to have the limits on units per structure and have more sort of that lower density scale to it. And so the goal here is to make it a little bit of, let's say, a better sell for someone who's prospectively going to develop a project in this sort of core village center area, knowing that there are other opportunities for allowable business uses and other such buildings that are sort of competing for the potential development ideas. And, fundamentally, it comes down to the one primary change and then, a handful of sort of smaller technical tweaks that are all in support support of that, which is to change the requirement, the current requirements, which are that no building may have more than 4 units in one of these senior developments. Half of the units need to be in buildings with 3 or fewer units, and at least 10% of them need to be duplexes or single family houses. And so just changing that, those structural requirements, we would be proposing the bylaw allow up to 50 units in a single building, but while keeping the same sort of large scale overall density rules, which are currently 1 unit per 7,260 square feet. And then there's also a limit on bedrooms per acre. And again, really just in this core area. And so that change then allows potential projects that would look something like this. This is an extremely conceptual view of sort of what the Parmars are thinking of in terms of a senior residential building. This is looking at it from Route 9, and just for comparison, this is the site today versus the rendered sort of very sketchy conceptual idea of what this looks like. And what you're seeing here is a 45 unit building, 3 stories. These are made up of 2 bedrooms of 850-ish square feet. Importantly, all single level units, centralized management utilities, and obviously, the location. And, the kind of things that we're going to emphasize are that with this change in this particular part of town, you're really talking about buildings that are of a similar scale to what's already around. This is really comparable in scale to the hotel that's already on this site, or a large retail building on the opposite side of the parking lot. This one's a little bigger than that, perhaps, but similar scale. And just by comparison, the 45 units of senior living that would go in a building like this, if you were to do that under the current bylaw, it would take 15 separate buildings. That would probably end up being a mix of single level units and sort of 2-story townhouse style units. And, we ballpark that in order to do an appropriate site like that, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 times as much land area. The buildings themselves will have more gross square footage. And then because of the inefficiencies of those separate structures, each of those square feet is probably 20 or 30% more expensive to build. And so when you look at that in terms of someone that has a property like this one, when the opportunities are to build sort of business uses of this scale versus that sort of separated out buildings for senior apartments, even if that's desirable, it kind of becomes a tough sell on that end. So, just sort of emphasizing the idea that scale-wise in the particular area that we're looking, this sort of construction, we feel fits. And also, under the current zoning bylaw, it's just not really a project that would be viable on this kind of site if you'd have to do it separated out. And then just, again, sort of perspective on this sort of site that we're talking about, this is the new building as it would map out on this site. So again, just something that we feel really does kind of fit in there. And Kishore, I don't know if you had any other thoughts on any of those points.
Yeah, a couple, I think one of the questions asked yesterday is, why don't you, there's a couple of things that were asked yesterday. One of them is, why don't you just do a extended stay hotel and turn it into over 55? A couple of reasons. One is that's not what hotels are made for. The second part of it is, I think we're good with hotels for the time being. Third part is, building a hotel compared to a building that's residential is a lot more money and a lot more labor intensive to run than just doing this structure. So that was one question that was asked. Another question that was asked was regarding the facility and rent. Depending on what the construction costs would be when a project like this goes forth, construction costs vary. They're not getting any cheaper. It's just going to go up. But we're hoping between, 1,500 to 2,500 a unit. But we won't know exactly until we get there. Then Another question has been asked about the affordability part. I mean, that's on the table, having some of the units, as affordable housing, so Hadley could keep, that percentage high and going. So that's still on the table too. Um, the other benefit to this is that it's there's not a lot of places where we currently can build it in Hadley. Um, so this is on Route 9 near the bridge. Um, Most of the utilities and infrastructure is already there. Um, DPW weighed into it a little bit yesterday. Scott was um, pretty much in favor, said he would like this project because it would draw some more revenue in that direction. It's over 55, so it's not going to be families, so there's not going to be any tax on any of the other kind of services that we have in Hadley, is particularly the school. Um, so that's another benefit to it. Um, that's it. I'm not sure if anyone has any
Yeah, I
questions.
think Kishore, last night you talked a little bit about how, in your conception, this style of housing is really targeted at folks who are moving out of larger houses, which then become available for other folks to buy and move in, perhaps that
Yeah,
want to stay in Hadley, and people that want to stay but don't want to maintain properties. And sort of the condo style that you see at the East Street development, at Barry's prospective next development, that's going to be great fit for some people. Others are so done with property maintenance but want to stay around. And so the apartment style, which is really not really feasible under the current zoning, is more what this is aimed at.
yeah. Just to reiterate what Chris said, yeah, we did have cursory talks with a few people in town, neighbors, and since yesterday we've heard from one or two people saying that a solution like this, and these are Hadley residents, would be great for them. Um, they want to downsize, but they don't want to spend another going from a $400,000 property that they have and then buying another $250,000 property on the get-go, if they could even find it in Hadley right now. Barry's East Street development was, I think, pretty much taken right away, and I'm guessing that his new development will probably be a hot selling item too. So that is another benefit. It's over 55. We would love Hadley residents to stay at Hadley residents, that moving in, freeing up that housing surplus in the area so other people could buy that. Property value too. Right now, we're having trouble. In general, it's rentals, commercial rentals are difficult right now. Leases, getting tenants is not easy. It's particularly not easy in our side of Route 9. But you could see it going towards the mall too, that there are some vacancies all over. So this is another benefit that um to Hadley that would occur.
Okay, sure. Can I just ask, this is just a hypothetical, and I don't know if this is, maybe Bill's a better person to ask, but let's say that this project does wind up moving forward and it's successful. Is there anything to preclude you, again, as you pointed out, I mean, you've got a fair amount of property there, right? Where the Hampton Inn, you've got the old Hadley Farmers Meeting House right next door to this. You have what I still call the Hadley Village Barn Shops, and then Manny's, right?
Yeah.
But down the road, if you ever wanted to convert any of the other existing structures to another over 55 apartment style like this, would you be precluded from that because there could only be one on this entire site, or could you theoretically do another phase at some point?
I mean, I guess it depends on how the bylaws are amended or changed, or if there's any controls in it. Right now, we wouldn't have any plans of turning our Hampton Inn or our Homewood or even, our town place that we're building into residential. They're just not built for that in our
No,
view.
I'm
Yeah.
just talking about your specifically this
Oh,
site,
the site,
taking
well,
another portion of
yeah,
the site and
yeah.
converting it.
So the Hamptons on there, we wouldn't, we, at this point, we're not entertaining that idea. You know, the
Mhm.
discussions that we've had within the families, it hasn't come up of turning the Hampton into an apartment complex whatsoever, or any extended stay living.
Mhm.
I'm never gonna say never. I mean, but at this point, we don't have any long-term plans. I mean, our agreement with the franchise is probably another, I think, another 10, 15 years. And those franchise agreements, depending on the franchise, isn't they're not easy to get out of, and they're costly to get out of if you do manage it. Um, the other part of it is that the the occupancy revenue that the hotel does generate is a big plus to the town. So we probably wouldn't take that away unless it becomes very detrimental to our business. So,
Yeah,
uh,
thank you for that. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
so
and I think, and Bill may have some other thoughts, but when this goes to the planning board, even though the Parmars are sort of the proponents of this zone change, if there are technical changes and additions or subtractions that would cause the planning board to be favorable and give an endorsement to the change, then certainly we're going to make those. Currently, we're not proposing any change other than maximum number of units in a structure. So there would be nothing to say that a second structure of 50 or less could be on the property. However, there are additional density restrictions in terms of number of units per square foot of land area and number of bedrooms per square foot of land area. And so off the top of my head, I don't know if this maxes out the site or not, but there is a cap at which we'd bump our heads on at some point.
Okay, yeah, that's really what I was getting at, Chris. Thank you. No,
yeah, okay. So, it's not an easy, like, we appreciate the fact that there needs to be discussion regarding this, and it's not just flipping a switch or writing something in the bylaw that just changes it and happy go lucky. I mean, there is a lot of stuff to go through in the weeds regarding this. So,
And
yeah,
the fewer changes we are looking at a time, the easier it is to visualize the outcome
Mhm.
and to be favorably disposed to it.
Mhm.
I know we had a question that came up after the Friday, after last Thursday's vote on the Barry Roberts property, that there's a hotel that could possibly be converted to senior housing, or tucked away. I forget what that franchise is. It used to be.
Is it the Holiday Inn or
It was the Holiday Inn. It's something else now.
it's a
Comfort?
Comfort Inn now.
Okay,
Yeah.
which used to be one of your old brands.
Yeah,
like-
we used to have that. We call them flags in the hotel business. We used to have that flag, and then the requirement was to have 3 stories, so they kicked us out, and we went to Roadway, and that was a writing on the wall for just redeveloping that into a Marriott product, because going into this, like, a little bit of the hotel business, roadways are more of their, like, the Knights Inn would have should have been a roadway. That's a type of property. It's an owner operated on site um, business. And that's not, we weren't able to be owner operators at the site at all time. That's not how we're running things right now. But um, yeah, it's, there would be a lot of work knowing that building. From what I know of it, there's still a lot of work regarding being being able to convert that to senior housing.
I think that'll be true of converting anything. And then
Yeah.
we're really looking at potential reuse, which might be, when when their franchise agreement ends, depending on how they consider the life expectancy of the structure, they'll have other options at that point. But there are no guarantees there.
No. All right. Yeah.
But in this case, the senior housing is the primary exception we offer to the general rule of one dwelling per lot, or one dwelling and one ADU per lot these days. So the senior housing those are counted as homes. And we did want to not have it be especially dense. So that's why there were the limits that were put in at the time. But at the same time, we're willing to look at other proposals because, as it was mentioned, since we adopted the senior housing bylaw probably close to 15 years ago now, we've only had one successful development. So, yeah, we'll look at other suggestions. I haven't looked at the senior housing for a while. I believe there was also some limit of function of the number of dwellings in the town as a whole.
Yes, and so currently I believe that's 5% of the total single-family homes on the assessor's roll. And I think I think someone else is in a better position to explain why, but part of our suggested text would change that from 5 to 10%.
Okay.
So other economic development committees, so Sean, Crystal, Mark, Amy, our board had a chance, like I said, to receive this information last night at our meeting, and I can say, it was certainly met favorably by the select board. So just curious if you have further questions for Kishore or Chris.
Not sure if I have a question, but it was part of the housing survey we did. The townspeople did say that they actively want choices for senior housing.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask exactly the square footage per apartment in this proposed site for the 55 and over.
Chris, do you have that on the drawings by any chance?
Yeah, so the actual living space in this concept is 850 square feet. And then with common space and everything else, I think it ends up being a little bit over 1,000 square feet of total building per unit.
Okay.
And would they be 1 and 2 bedrooms, all 1 bedroom, studio?
I think these are primarily 2-bedroom, and another part of that senior housing overlay that we're not proposing to change is a maximum of 2 bedrooms per unit.
Mhm. Okay.
Molly, you wouldn't have the information of the square footage on Golden Court, would you? Is there somewhere I can find that?
I don't, but I'd be really surprised it's 850.
Yeah,
I think those are pretty small units.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping for, that any senior housing that is built is going to be a livable situation for someone who wants to downsize from a house and not feel like they're living in a box.
Mhm.
That's-
Well, a ranch is what, 1,600 square feet, basically,
Mhm.
typically? I mean, just like a regular,
If you go old enough, I'm sitting in a 1947 ranch that's 1,100 including the addition that was put on. So.
Oh, okay.
That's excellent then.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that might give you some sense of scale.
Well, that's great then. That's a big improvement. And I do believe, again, that our seniors do not want to leave Hadley. But again, it's hard to find livable space that they can afford.
Mhm.
So this would, I believe this would benefit Hadley, the revenue, the income, and people, generational wanting to be able to live out their days in Hadley and not have to move somewhere else or stay in a house that's 4 or 5 bedrooms and they're alone.
Okay. So,
But again, as Bill said, we are open to other suggestions.
mhm. All right, so if anybody has any questions, we can certainly funnel those over to one or both of you. And Bill, I believe the first December 3rd, is that right?
I think, yeah, I mean, Bill makes an agenda. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well, December 3rd is our next planning board meeting. It is the meeting that we dedicate to planning as opposed to permitting. We do have Pioneer Valley Planning Commission scheduled for then, and we are also doing a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund
Mhm.
to discuss the ask from the Econo Lodge for a contribution. But I think there'll be enough time to, lay out some of to do basically what you did here, but maybe a little more detailed discussion of the specific changes you're proposing. I know Tom Reedy gave us some of that at the beginning, but at the time we thought changing the components and adding more space to senior housing simultaneously would be a big chunk to bite off. And considering how late the meeting ran, I am glad that we did keep it simple. Because there was at one point there was a possibility the whole thing could fall apart. So turned out in retrospect, no, but there were some off the wall comments and requests that were popping up at after 10 o'clock that yeah. So I think it's good to keep this a little bit more focused. We do end up with a hole in the zoning component of the Springtown meeting anyway, because we had thought that the 40R process would be further along. It looks like that will not happen. So we do have a space that we can use for this.
Sounds good to us.
Yeah, and we're certainly prepared. This was not the forum to sort of dig into the finer details, but we've got a red line copy, and there really are not that many changes. So I think we can go over what we're proposing to change in a pretty good level of detail.
Okay.
All right, so if anybody wants to, get more information and hear what is on the planning board's mind, you can certainly tune into their meeting week from next Tuesday, so December 3rd.
That's a reminder that I have to get that agenda out early because of the holiday.
Yep. All right, well, Kishore and Chris, thank you so much for spending time with us. Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having us and listening to us. So appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the update on the 40R study committee. Justin, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, isn't able to be with us. Oh, which reminds me, I want to announce that after I indicated who from the committee was present, Crystal joined a little bit later. So Crystal is with us as well. So Justin said that by way of update, that he wanted us to know that they were unable to meet for a few months due to some quorum issues, but they did meet this past Monday to review FAQs, and they plan on meeting again on Monday, December 2nd. He also wanted to mention that they're looking for new members for the Smart Growth Committee. I don't know if they must have had some turnover there. And he said specifically it would be nice if they could find somebody who is a renter to represent that group. So if anybody here knows of anybody who might be interested in being on the Smart Growth Committee, you can contact, I believe Mark Dunn is the chair, or certainly you can go through Justin as well.
Or you can send it to the planning board because we're the we're the appointing authority for that.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, better idea. Then let's do it right. So planning at hadleyma.gov.
Correct.
All right. Okay. And then next on the agenda, planning projects under review. So big news there, Bill, is the vote at town meeting, I guess.
Well, let me go back for a moment because I have some more on the 40R Um, the grant that we had obtained last year, or early this spring for the 40R, we had hoped would see it through to development of a zoning bylaw, but they ended up taking a lot of time fine-tuning the questionnaire, and most of the grant funding was consumed before they got as far as preparing a draft bylaw. Kyle from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission did identify another source of funding. We worked with him to submit an application to one of the state alphabet agencies. We have not heard back on that yet. Some grants are coming out from that agency. We just haven't heard anything about ours. So the 40R committee, in addition to being shorthanded, is working without direct guidance from, without a direct representative of Pioneer Valley Planning Commission for the time being. Not quite sure. Plan B is we might make a second round of applications to the same PVPC grant source for next year. We'll see. Not sure how they'll feel about that, but we'll see how it'll play out. Moving on to housing. Yes, the big news is that the senior housing overlay district was expanded to include the parcels between Route 9 and Rocky Hill Road, to the east of North Maple Street and to the west of Route 116. That in turn will eventually lead to an application from Barry Roberts for 40 or so units on the Babb Farm. And if you're not familiar with it, the Babb Farm is really right up at the intersection of North Maple and Rocky Hill Road. There's some houses right at the corner, but the area to the east is the Babb Farm, a lot of open space in there. So it's a two-step process. First, we had to get town meeting, and this is the same process that'll apply to the Parmars. First, we had to get town meeting to modify the senior housing overlay district. And then Barry will come in with a special permit application for a specific senior housing project on the site.
Is this the same project that he presented, was it 2 months ago?
Yes. Yeah, it's sort of a combination of you have to be very careful you follow the rules of both processes, even though for all intents and purposes, it's what we voted on at town meeting was a referendum on putting senior housing on a particular part of the area. So anyway, that's underway. No timeline on when we expect to see an application. Probably months. It'll definitely not be in 2024. Sometime in 2025. We just heard from the Parmars. First of all, Barry will also be doing a mixture of condo and rentals on his property. He'll have to provide at least 15% affordability. And last time we negotiated a payment in lieu of providing affordable units, a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That was uncomfortable. We spent a lot of time talking about a fair formula and never came up with one. So we've already advised him that we do really expect to be looking at affordable units on site. And affordable condos are very hard to manage. Affordable rental units are much easier to manage. Parmars, we already he already said that all be rentals and there'd be about 50 units. Again, they have to be a minimum of 15% affordable. If he was willing to provide more affordability, we might be able to negotiate more flexibility in other areas. We'll see how we have seen nothing more than what you have seen for his proposals. Again, the earliest we could see that coming in would be the earliest we could take up the proposal to extend or to modify the terms of the Senior Housing Overlay District would be the May 2025 town meeting. And I wouldn't expect that he would put much more effort into the engineering until he knew that the site was the rules had been changed. So probably as a practical matter, that's looking at the fall of 2025 for an application. Valley CDC is moving ahead on the Econo Lodge conversion. That'll be 50 units and they'll all be affordable. They have asked for a contribution from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in the amount of $250,000 towards the development. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund will be meeting December 3rd to discuss that. I don't want to prejudge how that's going to come out. And we did approve a 2-lot subdivision off Breckenridge Road that'll produce 1 building lot and 1 non-building lot. So that's really not a factor. But if anyone wondered what was going on, that's the first formal subdivision I think we've approved this year.
Bill, just going back to the Affordable Housing Trust. Affordable Housing Trust. We haven't had any other requests to date, have we?
We have not.
Okay.
If you remember, we did open it up, created a protocol for rental assistance during COVID, but never had any applications.
Right.
And that program was terminated.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned the affordable housing, the 40R, again, that will provide could lead to more housing options, including mixed use, townhouses, condos, rentals. That really, first of all, we have to create a zoning district. But once we create the zoning district, that doesn't make anything happen. So we'd be looking at what developers might come forward, if any. That would be, well, if we're looking at fall 2025 to even create the zoning district, that's looking to 26 and 27 for actual development.
Bill, given the funding situation with the smart growth leading to the 40R that eventually leads to more housing and more affordable housing, is it possible that funds could be utilized from the Affordable Housing Trust to keep that moving?
We probably could, possibly could. I'd want to check on that.
Okay, so maybe we could talk about that at that meeting.
Okay.
I just have a question on the 2 senior developments. Would those both fall into that category where as long as 15% were affordable, we'd get to count all of the units as affordable housing in Hadley?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what Barry is talking about is, so if he puts in 40, 15% is 6. I anticipate he would probably put the 6 aside as rental and then sell the balance as market rate condos. So we would get to count the 6 rentals, but we would not get to count the 44 market rate ones. For the Parmar property with 50 units, he would still have to have the 15% affordable, but because it's rental, 100% of them would be counted.
Oh, I see. So that's a big distinction, yeah.
It is, yes.
So Bill, can I ask a question? So we do not have a price on um, the property that is going to be built off of Rocky Hill Road in that area, North Maple. We do not have a price of the units or anything, correct?
We don't.
Okay.
For starters, we don't know what Barry is paying for the land.
Oh, okay.
And that in turn informs, that's your starting point before you buy a stick of lumber. You have to amortize your development across your purchase price.
Okay. And you
I
said,
am anticipating, because he will have that mix of affordable units in with the other units, the the rules require that the affordable units be substantially the same kind and quality as the market rate units. Or he could put in upgrades. For example, you might have Formica counters in the affordable and have granite counters in the market rate, but they're going to be substantially the same size. So I suspect, but I have nothing concrete to point to, that the overall price of the Bab Farm units will be less than the prices he's getting at the East Street Commons properties.
that'll be great because at the town meeting, there were a lot of people that said they can't afford to move out of their houses because of the cost of a new home, and the East Street homes are $4,000 or $5,000, $100,000, which is not something that's affordable for anyone that's a senior in Hadley. So that's a good thing right there.
Well, the only quibble I would have with that is, by definition, everyone who's in there is a senior.
Right.
So they're affordable to seniors. I agree they're not affordable to all seniors who might be interested.
Right.
But that's a limitation, and there are Hadley people in there, but not a lot, maybe 10%.
Really? I didn't know that. So maybe 10% are Hadley people in there?
Yes.
Wow. Someone told me that one of her friends wanted to move in there and the price was $500,000.
There was one that was just recently put on the market.
Yeah. So yeah, just trying to see, where this can go for the seniors in Hadley. I mean, I'm not that person, but I would like to see the generation stay instead of having to leave after they've lived here for so long and put so much into Hadley. And now in your senior years, you can't stay.
Right. Yeah, and certainly many people in East Street have moved from elsewhere, and presumably sold a more expensive house in
Exactly.
Greenwich, Connecticut, or what have you. And
Right.
but to some extent, we have to deal with the economics. And I've had this conversation with developers before, and basically you can go broke building 3-bedroom ranches. But the incremental effort to build a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 house isn't that great once you've got the land to start with. I mean, that's a factor. The sort of the average building lot on a average street, the assessors are carrying it at $130,000 to $140,000 as is, unimproved.
Like, that's the assessors,
That's the
not the
assessors.
market.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you factor that into construction, you're 130,000, call it 150,000 in, as I said, before you buy that first stick of lumber.
It is good to discuss it and provide these figures, because not a lot of people understand why the homes are the price that they are. They do not understand, as you stated, which I didn't know as well. Like you said, the price for a stick of lumber before you even start is $150,000. So a home can't be $250,000, $300,000 if you're starting off with nothing at just half. You know, but hopefully, you know, some apartments or dwellings will be able to be affordable in a range where, you know, seniors can make it work.
Yeah, and that's where the density construction comes into play.
Yeah.
I had a question there. I wasn't clear on whether the proposal tonight there at the barn shops, the village barn shops, whether that proposal to change the density, is that applied to the entire zone? Or
Yes.
is that just, so that's a change to all the
Yeah.
area? I got you.
We,
So
we-
would Barry be in a position to change his development to a higher
No.
density? No.
No, because he has sold all or substantially all of his units.
Oh, he's already sold all those units.
Yes.
No, he's talking about the new
He
property,
means the Bab
the
Farm.
Bath Farm.
Oh,
Oh,
no, it would apply. We would have to rename the Village Center Senior Housing Overlay, probably as the Village Center Senior Housing Overlay. And so yes, we would basically have two zones for senior housing. One, the idea was that the new zone was going to start off without changing any of the rules. So it's subject to the same rules as the old zone. If we go
It's just
back to
bigger.
the old zone and change the rules there, we will also denominate it as the old zone. We'll call it that. So that the rules that the Parmars are proposing to change will only apply to the old zone,
The high density.
the high density.
I
But
see.
it-
So it
It
won't
will
apply.
apply to all of the old zone.
It would.
Yes.
In
So
that, so that would include the malls.
no,
Oh,
the
no.
old zone is the Village Center Overlay District, which is the bridge to from the Coolidge Bridge east to Spruce Hill Road.
I gotcha.
So there isn't a lot of developable land in there. The scale of lots along there is generally smaller. There are a few open fields that might be attractive. Parmars are hemmed in by the Western Mass Electric Company. So they don't really have any expansion potential in there. But on the other side of Western Mass Electric, there's some open fields that are in the district that someone else could potentially bring forward another senior house, another 3-story building.
Mhm.
So just to be clear, Bill, this is the site we're discussing is across the street from the Nissan dealer, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And was there any discussion of increasing the density again down by the malls? I mean, we had talked about that before, obviously, but
That's what the 40R committee is looking at.
I got you.
One of the things they solicited was a suggestion of where should we look at 40R housing. And I think, although I don't know, I'm not on that committee, that they are basically leaning towards that area, the Hampshire Mall, Mountain Farms Mall, as far as Howard Johnson's.
Right.
The south side of Route 9 from, I guess basically call it the rail trail to the to Howard Johnson's. There isn't much beyond that is usable.
Well, it's been a journey, but I'm excited that we're actually talking about projects that could come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Same here.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that Barry will probably be the first one out of the gate
Mhm.
because I think they've done a fair amount of survey work. They have more detail work to do, but I think they'll be the first we'll see coming in.
Mhm. Okay, thanks for the detailed update as always, Bill. Next on the agenda, we had, we're hoping to get an update from UMass. As I mentioned, Tony couldn't be here tonight. I do have a meeting set up with him at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, I think about a variety of topics. So I'll see if I can, find out if there's anything going on with, I think we were hoping to see if there might be some sort of a spring semester project that we could get off the ground with the university. So more to come on that one at our next meeting. Other than that, any other updates or questions or suggestions for an agenda item? We want to stick with our December meeting.
I don't have anything for now, but if I do think of something, I will just email you, Molly.
That'd be December 19th, which I think is adequately clear of festivities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we, we'll proceed accordingly and assume that we'll be meeting on the 19th, and as people's calendars potentially start to get more full, if we're not going to make quorum, obviously we can cancel, but at this point, I think it would be good to see where things stand.
Agreed.
Sounds great.
So, Crystal, are you still doing the DEI meeting in 10 minutes? 5 minutes?
Oh, you're muted, Crystal.
Yes, I am. And I just text someone to let them know I'm running a little behind.
Well, I think we're done here. I'll join that Zoom if you want me to. Or
Okay, so you can, okay, I'm
but
glad.
basically I'll just repeat what I said here.
That's what, it's great that you're going to let the public know.
Okay.
Well, and I would like the public to know that Bill was in a 5 o'clock town meeting, 6 o'clock town meeting, and he's rolling into 7. So
Yeah.
thank you for your service.
Which I would not be able to do without Zoom.
That's right.
Right.
You are a true trooper.
Well, I'll jump. Okay, I'll wrap up this one then.
Yep. Well, before we do that, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Crystal, seconded by Sean. All of those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.